Dead Man's Hollow isn't on any map. It's not marked on trailheads or in ranger guides. But old folks in the town of Greenhurst whisper about it, usually after a few drinks and only ever before sundown. Still, curiosity is a sickness that infects the young. Ellie, Darren, Tasha, and Logan were city kids looking for thrills, podcast junkies and horror vloggers. They'd heard rumors of Appalachian hell hollows and urban legends. When a blurry Reddit post mentioned Dead Man's Hollow, claiming it was cursed, they packed up cameras and drove out. They found the trailhead based on coordinates dug up from a forgotten internet forum. It wasn't marked. Just an opening in the trees, choked with fog and silence. No birds. No wind. Just a long, descending path that swallowed sound. Half a mile in, they started hearing the whistling. It came from deeper down the trail. 3 short notes, rising, falling, rising again. Like someone calling a dog. But no one else was supposed to be out here. Darren whistled back, jokingly. Big mistake. The reply was immediate, loud, and from behind them. That night, they found a clearing with an old stone well at its center. Cracked and covered in moss. A rotted rope still hung into the blackness below. Ellie leaned over with a flashlight. Nothing but darkness. Then, a face. Pale. Expressionless. Gone in a blink. They ran. But the woods wouldn't let them. The trail split and twisted in ways it hadn't before. The trees moved. Darren swore the moon had shifted backward in the sky. At midnight, they found a cabin. It wasn't on the map. It wasn't on any maps. But it looked lived in, candles in the windows, smoke from the chimney, and a wooden sign over the door that said, "You answered the call." They didn't want to go in. But something was behind them, whistling again. And closer. Inside, the cabin was too large. Bigger than it looked from outside. Hallways where there shouldn't be. Rooms that didn't connect logically. The walls were covered in black and white photographs, all of people looking terrified, mid-scream, standing in that very same cabin. In one of the pictures, Ellie saw herself. Holding the camera. Mouth open in a frozen scream. Then the lights went out. Tasha vanished first. 1 second she was next to them, the next, just gone. Her scream echoed from the walls, then twisted into laughter that wasn't hers. They ran room to room only to find themselves back at the well. Somehow the inside of the cabin was the clearing. The well was inside now. Darren snapped and tried to climb in, screaming that they're in the walls, watching. They never saw him again. Ellie and Logan held onto each other until the dawn light began to pierce the trees. The cabin faded behind them as they ran. The whistle stopped. They made it to the car. Drove. Didn't speak. But the real twist came later. Back home, Ellie found new photos on her camera. One she didn't take. They showed her sleeping in her tent. One of the photos showed a tall, thin man standing behind her, mouth wide in a silent whistle. Then Logan stopped answering her calls. The police said his apartment was empty. No signs of a break-in, just hundreds of photos plastered to the walls. Every single one of Ellie. Now, every night at 3:03 a.m., Ellie hears a whistle outside her window. 3 short notes. Rising. Falling. Rising again. And every night, it's closer. They weren't supposed to be out that far. Jake, Kayla, Marcus, and Emily had planned a weekend hiking trip, but a late thunderstorm and a wrong turn off the trail left them soaked, freezing, and completely lost in the dense Appalachian wilderness. Just before nightfall, they stumbled across an old ranger's cabin tucked into a slope on Elk Root Ridge, boarded windows, rusted tools on the porch, and claw marks on the doorframe that looked far too large to belong to any bear. They went in anyway. Inside, the walls were lined with dusty maps and yellowed papers. A single cot sat in the corner, shredded. The fireplace was stone cold, but they lit it and tried to dry out. Emily found a journal in a drawer. It belonged to a man named Clive Hardwell, a ranger from the 1960s. Most of the entries were normal until the last few pages, written in shaky, frantic handwriting. It comes only after dusk. Not a bear. Not a man. Pale skin, no eyes. It screams like a dying deer. It can mimic voices. Don't listen. Don't open the door. I'm the last one. It waits outside. I've boarded the windows. If it gets in, burn this place. Then the last line, written in large block letters. IT crawls. They thought it was a prank, or maybe just the ramblings of an old ranger who spent too long alone in the woods. Until just after midnight. It started with the sound of something dragging along the roof. Then came the tapping, slow, deliberate, on each window. Kayla looked out. Nothing. But the forest felt wrong. The fog was thicker than it had any right to be, pressing against the glass like it was alive. Then came the voice. Kayla. Let me in. It's me, Jake. I'm cold. Jake was still sitting by the fire. They backed into the center of the room. The doorknob rattled, slowly at first, then violently. A wailing screech filled the night, like a baby crying and a coyote howling all at once. The boards on the windows began to crack, one by one. Then silence. They held their breath. Something enormous dropped onto the roof. Wood splintered. A long, pale limb with fingers too long and too many joints reached through the broken beams. Its skin was slick and pulsing. Where its eyes should have been, there were only pits that bled black liquid. Marcus screamed. The thing turned toward him and hissed, then mimicked his scream back at them. Exactly. Jake grabbed a lantern, lit it with the fireplace flame, and threw it into the attic space. Fire spread fast. Smoke choked them as the thing screeched again and retreated, fast, backwards, crawling into the woods like a spider skittering from flame. They escaped through the back wall just before the cabin collapsed. No one believed their story. Search and rescue found the remains of the cabin, the claw marks, and the burned journal, but no tracks. No bodies. No monster. Still, hikers avoid Elk Root Ridge after dark. Because sometimes, campers say they hear a voice in the fog whispering, "It's me. Let me in." Every town nestled deep in the Appalachian Mountains has its own ghost story, but none quite like the one about the cabin at Black Hollow Ridge. Locals say it was built in the early 1800s by a man named Elias Mercer. He was a quiet man, a trapper who lived alone after his wife and child died in a fire in the valley. He went up the mountain and built the cabin by hand, vanishing from town life. Over time, strange tales started surfacing. Hunters spoke of screams echoing through the woods at night, or lights flickering deep in the trees where no light should be. Then Elias disappeared. No one ever found his body. Just a trail of bloody footprints in the snow, leading from the front porch of the cabin into the woods, and stopping abruptly beneath an old, twisted hemlock tree. Years passed. The cabin stood empty, but never collapsed. It was as if the forest itself feared to reclaim it. In the fall of 1997, a group of college students from Asheville decided to hike and camp in the mountains. One of them, Lydia, had heard about the cabin and wanted to see if the legends were true. The rest laughed it off as local folklore. But as the sun began to sink behind the ridge, and the shadows stretched long and cold, they stumbled upon it, hidden among brambles and fog, its chimney cracked but the rest eerily intact. They should have turned back. That night, strange things happened. The fire they lit refused to stay burning. The air in the cabin felt colder than outside, heavy like a breath held too long. They heard footsteps on the porch, but no one was there. Then scratching, from inside the walls. One by one, they started seeing things, a pale face peering through the window, a child's voice whispering from under the floorboards, and Elias Mercer's journal, half-burned, lying on the mantel. Its last entry read, "She's here again. At the window. She never forgives. Never sleeps. She wants me to burn. Sometime after midnight, Lydia disappeared. No screams. No signs of struggle. Just her coat, folded neatly on the bed, and a single burnt match on the floor. The rest fled through the woods before dawn, too terrified to speak. Authorities found nothing, no blood, no signs of a struggle. The cabin was just empty. Except the next group who dared go back in 2005 found a fresh carving in the door. It said, "One down. More to go." And beneath it, Lydia's name. They say if you spend the night there alone, you'll hear her whispering through the chimney, asking for fire. If you answer, even in a whisper, you never come out. And the cabin? It's still there. Waiting.